there's a similar pattern in this course to the PDC where we move from patterns, broader thinking, into details. So ethics and principles, strategies, techniques. And so here towards the end of the course, we're really diving into those details. Teaching tools, a more detailed version of the teaching methods and teaching strategies we've spoken about, they actually can be compared to the technology that we brought up on the first evening. So remember seeing this poster? Ethics, principles, strategies and techniques. And when we were talking about teaching methods yesterday, Ollie was actually using the words methods and teaching strategies interchangeably, which was quite interesting. So we can compare teaching methods to our strategies for teaching, things like using posters, group work, and then the teaching tools are the techniques that help us to achieve our methods. Interestingly, there is overlap. So something like using posters is a method, but a poster would actually be the tool. And we just beat the rain, look at that. Oh, perfect timing. How does the rain know? Because we're clever, yes. Just like with our methods, we're considering our purpose and the topic and making that Venn diagram with those things. And obviously when we're thinking tools, as it's more specific than methods, we're considering what method we're using as well. So we'll dive into a whole host of teaching tools today. But before we get started, I'd like you to consider this apple in all of its appleness, the humble apple. And you've got a minute to chat with the person next to you about what topics you could use this apple in when teaching permaculture. What was a good idea we had?
Lunch.
Lunch? That's a very important PDC topic.
Energy.
Energy? How so?
It's a form of energy for us, food, it's a resource.
Yeah, clear example. Thanks, Mason.
Social permaculture just really
Yeah, how so?
economy in that, when you can easily have an abundance of apples if you have a tree.
Interesting.
Get really complicated and say, use the soil and say that the outside peel of the topsoil of the earth.
Thanks, Stacey.
Seed saving.
Seed saving.
Food sovereignty.
Food sovereignty. Jill?
As a diagram, there's another piece of fruit as the sun moving around.
Yeah.
Solar system.
Wow, and if the students are actually playing that role?
We thought we could take a few bites out of it, and then you've got that universal form in the patterns.
Yeah, the Overbeck jet. Nick?
Use it as a case study in social permaculture economics. It's like the idea of a commodity.
Yeah.
Like supply chains and things like that.
We'll hear 3 more, 4 more.
I'll just fair share, or the size of the pieces it gets cut into.
Yeah, great.
So we talked about using it as a tool by cutting it up into various like pie type things or slices, and then using that 12 principles, if you cut it in 12, or you're saying any kind of circular pie chart.
I thought of the structure of ideal soil, so you could write it up, should have this much silver.
Yeah, clear example. We'll go pickles and then Megan. Did you have one?
Yeah, just
Yep.
same as what Charlie said, like eating it and using it as a representation of Morrison's core.
Thanks, pickles.
And the hearts in there as well. Star shape, if you slice it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely used in cutting.
Yeah.
I had a similar brainwave to you guys about principles, but I was also thinking in connection with the ethics. So if we cut the core as the ethics and then the 12 principles, and that they all join together to represent what permaculture is.
Oh, getting a bit meta, a bit metaphorical. I like that. So we had our apple. Let's add to the mix a box, a jar, and a shirt. Again, 1 minute with the person next to you.
All of them?
With the person next to you are using all or combinations of topics that you could teach with these teaching tools in permaculture. So the invitation is, if you had one that you thought was interesting for the group to know, come up, hold up the thing and explain it to us, or mime it out for us quickly.
So here's a property. Creepy house on it. And the rainwater tank here, and you know, this is the sun. It's exactly what Jody said.
Yeah, we've had it.
Sum it up a little bit and then and open. You talk about the differences you could go in like preserving, but also like systems and energy. That's what there's external forces, or it's sealed.
Gonna get some soil, put it in a jar, find a lid. Don't have one. Do a soil jar test.
Role-playing game where several people had one each. That was water, that was food, that was housing, that was access to appropriate clothing. So then, how can we interact with each other or share what we've got to make more of a community? So this group over here, your principle is give me a principle, value diversity, okay? And I'd like you to use these things to demonstrate that principle to the rest of the time.
Pardon me for not getting up.
Planning for disaster, how quick can you pack a bath? Shelter, water? Right.
Almost done.
Don't do that way, be all, to be prepared. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. We'll just go with Kath first, Charlie.
Pardon me for not getting up, but if I had people not understanding that parent material could affect surface soils, I'd be layering things in the box with the apple in the middle or towards the bottom and asking them to imagine what would happen over time to the fabric that got wet by the rotting apple and to the smell and so on, and how that would influence the integrity of what were originally layers.
So Greta's idea was that, topography, this could be kind of moulded and show a saddle and a ridge and different water harvesting possibilities. Plus there's like lots of patterns on this, well, mainly squares, which could be, different areas for categorizing plant species. This one has more interesting patterns, so again, the patterns, like, identifying the forms, or again, categorizing different. No, I lost it.
I like the rock.
Yeah.
Using these items here, I'd like you all to consider how far each of them has travelled, the cost of them in our society, but then also the cost of them to the wider planet.
So we're going to do a time over time observation of the composting process. So we're going to put the apple in the jar. What else do we need to add to this jar so that we can have a healthy composting process?
Box.
Yes, absolutely. Carbon. One more.
Maybe produce new waste. So this is if we can make a vinegar, you can save the seeds, the jar of this storage vessel, compost or keeping the fruit flies and stuff away, then you have airflow, and drying apples.
Thanks, Jodie. Beautiful example. Whoa, who thought we could use these simple items in so many different ways? If you're getting stuck, you're trying to throw a class together, it can be really useful to look around you and just unlock that creativity. See, what can I do with these simple items that I'm looking at? And you won't necessarily use them, you might, but it can start to get you thinking in more creative ways. Okay. So I'm trying to avoid, maybe I can just sneak in, draw up here. I forgot what's on, but it's pretty clear today, so don't need to worry about that. So we're in our site analysis and assessment topic, a couple of days into our PDC, and we're starting to talk about sun angle. Here's our house with our little garage. North is up there, and our winter sun angle, and then in a slightly different and confusing colour, we'll draw our summer sun angle. Summer. Got summer and winter noted there. And someone says, I can see that there, but how does that relate to my house? I don't understand. And you say, thanks for the question. This is a really tricky topic, so we're going to touch on it in a few different ways. Here's our house, very clear, very, very large. Everybody can see this house. Now we're imagining this house and we've got our sun angle here. Everyone can see this, right? It's very clear. You can see that over there, can't you, Jasper? Yes, very clear, yes. Sarah can see this here. What's happening with this teaching tool? I'm on the right track, but what's one of its limitations?
Scale.
Scale. Here's our house. Maybe if it's here. And I'd ask Rachel to please hold the torch down here. So we're going through this together. In winter, where does our sun tend to rise? Let's say the shortest day of the year. We just looked it up on SunCalc together. Yeah, this way. So rising here, and how high does it get to in the sky? Yeah, about here. Excellent, Rachel. And then setting. So the direction is quite forward. We're looking at this. And after this activity, we're going to go outside and observe the sun angles on this building. And tomorrow morning, we'll look again so we can see the difference. Thanks, Rachel. Couple things going on here. Box larger, easier to see. What else was happening there? Pat? It's in the middle. It's in the middle?
Inclusive.
Yeah, you ask for assistance, and that could, if that was the person that asked the question, potentially you're getting more involved and engaged.
Mm-hmm. What about for a topic like sun angles that most people seem to have difficulty understanding? First up with one explanation.
Showed several examples and then said we're going to do another example later.
Visual learners.
Yeah, it gives them learning style.
Kind of stage learners.
Yeah. So when you're teaching and someone says, I don't understand what you've just told me, we say, thanks for that. Let's do it in a different way. And teaching tools can really enable us to do it in many different ways. You'll find when you're researching to put on a class that if something's hard for you to get your head around, it's not a signal that we need to be scared of that information and not teach that topic. It's a signal that there's an opportunity there to cover that base in different ways. Right?
Oh, no, I was just thinking how relevant it is, and the question is if that's not working, something else. Questions I've had, people in Northern Hemisphere have sometimes said to me, does the sun still rise in the east and the southern hemisphere? Because the seasons are alternate, so therefore does the sun. Another question is, the sun turn from east to west, or west? Does the earth turn from west to east or east to west? And those things would be absolutely fabulous for microclimates. So you've got a bare board, which is a piece of land. Is there a microclimate on that? See the board? That's your land. Someone put the box on it, please. Would you mind? Thanks, Rachel. Now, what's happened in relation to shadow and water collection and soil changes and vegetation? We've got the beginning of a microclimate. You can just go on adding all those and people can see, you can see just from the lights above, you've got the beginning of microclimate on that land. Then we might say we want to make it warmer or cooler, or we want to increase the amount of plants we've got by changing our microclimate. How could we do that if we know that cold winds drift downhill and hot winds go uphill? And now we can add some slope. So, you know, you can just take that and build and build and build endlessly. And people love gadgets, so they'll watch those gadgets. And they'll want that jar to come in the apple. But I have to go, sorry.
Thanks, Ray.
Excuse me.
Shani, could you please let that other poster down? The teaching tool destroyer. I mean, the posters here are clearly very precious and expensive. We're drawing our attention to the visa criteria that it says up the top there. It says visible. So we've just seen visible is important when we're choosing our teaching tools. That it has impact. Rose's explanation, putting a box on a whiteboard, had us all going, oh, yeah. Gets that thinking going. That it's simple. Everything we're talking about in this session is simple. And that it's, of course, appropriate to our topic and our outcomes. Now, in addition to that, we're seeing teaching tools that are multi-purpose. You can use a box for any number of things. In one PDC, a box could be used 8 or 9 times effectively. Well, you know. It's so context dependent. Yeah. I mean, it'd be a cool class thing. The box is coming out again. What's it going to be today? Oh yeah, that would be fun. So when you come to a PDC or another kind of course, you bring your teacher's kit with you. So I've got a few things that I've found to be useful to have in my teacher's kit. A lot of them I've left in South Australia and Tasmania because I'm about to return there to teach. Kat Labors from the Plumbery brings her own clock. One that works better than this one, hopefully. But it's not so weird to go out and buy one like this. It needs to be big enough so that you can see it from the back of the room. Of course, you want to bring what you need for your topic. If you're teaching scale and base mapping, don't always assume that even though they're running a PDC all the time, that they have the things that are needed to teach that topic. So checking in what they have. If you need to refer to a book like Retro Suburbia or the Designer's Manual and you're travelling in by public transport, always pays to ask, do you have a copy of that book so I can reference it? Teaching scale and base mapping, I had to go and buy 7 of these. It's expensive. Scale rules, what are they, 35, 40 bucks? It's preferable, obviously, if the venue has it, but they don't always. Some kind of logistical things. If you're running a lot of courses where you do use name tags, having ones that are reusable can be something that people use. Obviously, you can make them out of more natural stuff, but if you're running a lot of courses, just having a box collecting them at the end. If you're running courses that have party nights, having reusable bunting or lights that mean we avoid single-use items can be an interesting thing to have. My mum makes community bunting out of old sheets from the op shop and gives it out all over the place. And if you're handy with a sewing machine, that can be a nice thing too. Our teaching kit, we try to keep. Yes, they have a reusable community bunting library, and there's about 15 different kinds for Halloween, kids' birthday parties, weddings, all sorts of things.
We have so much that I wish some people would steal some bits.
Oh yeah, out the back, right? Yep. There you go, if you're in Freo or Perth, check out Ecoburbia anyway, but go and borrow the bunting. Attempting to keep our teaching kit as low waste as possible. So these are the Oz pens we mentioned before. And this is how you recharge them. They come with this special little thing of ink, a few drops in. And I'd probably refill the pens twice in a course. They last for 1,000,000 years. It's a few drops of ink. Like I said before, it pays themselves off quite quickly. Tech stuff, dongle, if you're teaching somewhere where you need internet and know that it's going to be dodgy. So if you're on Telstra, bring an Optus one. One of these clicky things for changing PowerPoints can be great, and they're not very expensive. And if you're using PowerPoints, something that I never have, and it's always a mad scramble, adapters for your computer. I bring my teaching cards. You might bring some magazines or old permaculture calendars, which are a great substitute. And then some little things I've found to be useful. I print out a sheet of images for getting people in groups. Always have a bunch of these because you never know if it's groups of 8, 3, 4, so have enough you can cut up. They can be used for other activities as well. Any worksheets that you've got, this is a style guide to help people along with their designs, with their design work. I can stick that up if you want to have a look at that. This is really handy that Milkwood came up with. Everyone would get this in their learning kits on the first day. They're actually scale rulers printed to scale. And I bring a couple of these with me just in case we have half of the class doing some massive scale property and we don't have enough scale rulers for them all to work in.
Is that available online?
Sorry?
Is that available online? Sorry.
It's not, but this one isn't. But I'd imagine in Google Images search you'd probably find another version and just printing it at A4.
You used to stick them on a ruler.
Yep, or just cut them out and use them as a ruler. So having my own scale rulers, but there's like scale rulers for smaller scales and scale rulers for bigger scales. And occasionally, look, this has 1 to 2,500 on it. I don't have a scale ruler with that scale, and we have had to use it occasionally. And really easy if you're flying or public transport or hitchhiking to your teaching gig, you can just chuck that in your bag. Having your necessities like a ball of string, chalk, you know, the things that help us think up classes on the spot. Something like this for group work. Haven't had to use it with this group. Just walking around, monitoring, holding this up can be useful. And probably my favourite thing that I bring in my teaching kit is what I call my brain. So when I'm teaching, I outsource my brain to a page. And remember to bring it along, it's important. All of the tricky stuff that's hard to remember. These are for those who I've taught scale and base mapping to, 7 steps to base map success. So how to get from an image on Google Images to a properly scaled base map on your page is all here. And so when I'm teaching it, I'll actually stick this on the whiteboard next to me. And then I'll stick it on the wall afterwards. We've got gradient. So I don't have to remember. And if someone asks, how do I measure gradient? How do I measure slope? I say, great, I've just stuck it on the wall over there. You go and follow that. Trilateration. Handy guide to scale and block size. So for an A4 piece of paper, if we're designing a room, we'd be using a 1 to 25 scale. And so if your mind doesn't hold on to numbers well, mine doesn't. I know all this, I've taught all this, I've used all this 100 times, but it doesn't always stick in my mind in that crucial moment. I know that it's here as a backup. And it's great for learners to have this stuff stuck on the wall so that they can take a picture of it too.
Can you write a book with all that in it? That'd be great.
One of the things I saw you use a couple of nights ago was blank laminated cards, or cards that are laminated that have got blank pieces, and use them as whiteboard.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great one. Versatile, yeah?
Same.
Versatile.
Absolutely. And much more portable than whiteboard.
Maybe people will get a bit tired in the afternoon and just to break things up. Which strategies to use windows as a whiteboard, or flip up a dressing table against the wall to something completely unexpected. That thing could be used as a whiteboard.
So if we didn't have people volunteer to bring whiteboards for this course, for micro teaching, that's what we'd be doing. Use a window, use a table. Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Oh, great. And just taking care not to use the permanent marker on someone else's fridge. That'd be embarrassing. You'd be looking at a teaching methods brainstorm for the rest of your days.
I don't know if people notice, but if you do mark something with a permanent marker and then you take a whiteboard marker and rub over it, it actually comes off.
Hand sanitizer's good for that too.
Do check whatever surface you're going to use as a whiteboard in an inconspicuous place first. Can you get it off? Yes.
Oh. Or at least draw something really rude and funny so that if you can't get it off, it's there forever. But for those who've done a PDC at Fair Harvest with PB as one of the teachers, do you remember how he outsources his brain? PB, who's one of the teachers on the Fair Harvest PDC, doesn't have a mind for numbers either. I know because he's told the class. And he'll actually write on the materials he's talking about what their R value is, so insulation properties of bricks, of hemp, of straw bales. He talks about different kinds of lime. He writes on there what they're called, where they're from. So everything he's talking about, which is really impressive and all this great information, is actually written there for him. So make it really easy on yourself. You don't actually have to have an excellent memory to be a teacher. Teaching something over and over again is an excellent way to learn about a topic, but you can outsource your brain in whatever way works for you. Posters are another really easy way. Write all the stats on the poster that you want to cover and refer to it. So PowerPoint can serve that purpose, but if we can take some of that off the PowerPoint and put it on a brick, and PB never uses PowerPoint, I don't think he ever has, then it's there and people can go back later, look at that brick and get that visual trigger, oh, that's the R value of a brick. Other thoughts on that? Outsourcing our brains?
I do a similar thing. I use lots of cardboard cards with diagrams or pictures on them, and I will have something written on the back, which either if the students are passing around, they can turn it over and read it themselves, or if I'm showing it to the class, I can go, oh yeah, this stuff.
Sounds really good.
Sounds good.
If you have a topic with, say, 12 things that you'd like to explore, say social permaculture, 12 examples, alternative technology, 10 or 12 examples, 8 examples, 15 examples, whatever. You think number of examples, opportunity, cards like what Gemma's talking about, photo, text, group work, pairs, and then the information is out in the room without you having to remember it, without you having to say it, and then share what your card was in your pair with the class. Tamara?
Something I remember that you did on PDC, which I then adopted in my classes, is to ask who in the room is mathsy, which I absolutely loved. Because there's normally one person that can at least remember some figures, and if there's like any maths, particularly scale, we can have some formulas pre-written down, but then there's usually someone that will be happy to jump in and do the figuring out part, which I think is a fun thing to do.
Yeah, so who in this room enjoys maths? Who's a mathsy person? And who's like terrified, hate the word, bringing up everything for me now, I'm about to run away and hide? Excellent, we have that diversity. So mathsy people, hands up again. If you see non-mathsy people crying in the corner this afternoon, it's your job as a responsible citizen to go and say, hey, can I help out, please? That's going to help us get through this scaling our own base maps afternoon. Yeah, thanks, Tamara. Jill?
I was going to comment, that's what I love about learning now compared to the old school years and years ago way of just having everyone supposed to know an even keel of knowing everything. It's even admitting now that, okay, as teachers, we don't know everything and we don't have to, and we're simply a conduit between the information and the student. How do we let that run through? And we need reminding of the content on the way as well, that's fine. So don't put, I would say to myself, don't put pressure on to know it all. Remind myself in any way possible as well. Students are still going to learn. The outcome's still the same.
Yeah, so we do our research, we look into the content, we can never know everything, and sometimes it's hard to remember things in the moment. So we just build in that redundancy to our design of our lesson so that what we need to know is there. And it takes the pressure off. It also increases learning.
Brenna, just one quick thing.
Yep.
When it's appropriate for you, can I have a round about PowerPoint? Yeah. It's like 3 minutes, but when it fits into what you're doing.
Sure, okay. I actually have a really great PowerPoint of how not to use PowerPoint. It's hilarious, but I won't have time to do it today. Maybe I'll send it out in the group resources afterwards. Have real fun making it.
It's really important when you teach that you document your thinking somehow so that you can, like you're saying, with your visual images. I do mine with my maths, but it's also because then when you do it next time, you're not back at zero, and yeah.
And your class plans are done in pictures, but you could also use your poster, like a what's on poster for this session, as your outsourcing of your brain for your class plan. So you know where you're going, you know how much you've got to get done before the class is over, and you've got, it might be headings, but it also might be dot points underneath, so you know some of those specific technical things, and you're like, right, I can work through this class plan, and I don't have to have it all in my head.
And that's a visual aid for learners as well, to have that up there. Works really well if you're running your session and you know exactly what you're getting through. Is still effective, but in a different way if you're co-teaching and it's more loose, like with some co-teacher we might have met this week. It does, and then if she misses something, what happens? Go back to it. So I'd like to have 4 volunteers, please, to play a really fun game. A couple people have seen this before in the PDC. Thank you, Mason.
I'm just on my mobile at the moment. Can I ask if we can make more of a circle? We've got quite a rectangle and we're finding it.
Well, what we're going to do is one more volunteer, please. Sitting on the ground around this real close. And the rest of us are going to fishbowl, which is a teaching technique, a method, sorry, where we stand around closely and watch. So have a look. We've got house 1, family with kids, house 2, student share house, and 3, an elderly woman. And here we actually have elements for our designs. Now we're a few days into our PDC. No right or wrong answers. Start throwing down some and having a chat about why something might go where. Talking to these guys. So this is fishbowl. Something's happening in the middle with our 4 volunteers. We're watching. They're the fish.
Oh, we're the bowl.
We're the bowl.
Okay. We discuss amongst ourselves where maybe.
Yeah. So imagine you're a teacher, and this is a teaching tool you're using. It's a poster. It's a way to use posters. And the outcome is that the students, the desired outcome is that they start thinking about design for the first time. How does it feel to be a teacher watching your teaching tool happening? How much input are you having as a teacher?
Brenna, I only interrupt you because I'm not sure what to do, or there's a social kind of situation for otherwise.
I just want to take the students' question.
I think there's the thing about building the process. I think there's that set up where it's just like this, and they go right on the phone or go on the it's probably getting
always wondering. So this is also a way.
It is. And noticing people's strengths and then gaps that we can speak to later on.
In a classroom situation, are you wanting the students in the fishbowl to be contributing to that, or is it just a process of watching them?
Great question. So we're going to come back to that. Thank you so much, group. We'll come back to our seats now.
I've been trying to do one of these all week.
And if we're on the kind of corners of the classroom in our rectangle shape, if we can circleify the circle a little more. Thank you. So Nick's question was, if we're in a classroom setting, are the students standing around watching? And in a classroom setting, you'd have enough of these for small groups to all work on their own, and you as a teacher are walking around monitoring. If you've got a co-teacher, you'd both look, because design understanding is quite important. Or the way that I do it is having 3 different stations set up. One is this, one is sandpit and natural materials, one is either projector on the whiteboard and you're making changes, or because this projector can't project on the whiteboard, poster, pin to the whiteboard. We can actually mark on this with whiteboard markers in a similar way. This is another example of how to use posters, people scribbling on them. Any other questions or comments about this use of the poster teaching tool? At the Pemberton CRC, it's only $12. But they often won't do A1 or A0 size, and the Fremantle one, it would cost $55 to get something like this done.
Go to a regional community resource centre, seriously.
Yeah, Pemberton CRCs. I called them all. Pemberton. I called them all. What's useful about posters as a teaching tool?
They're mobile.
Yeah, they're mobile.
They're big enough to see.
Yes. Yes, so this is down. Lucky, I've got my very important slide that I'm teaching the whole design session to on a poster. It's really hot today. Great, taking the poster and we're going to go outside. I had some extra slides, that's fine, we'll work around it. So having your main things printed out can be so useful. Also, you can just make them up on the spot. I could have just drawn 3 squares on a piece of paper here and then written family, share house, single elderly, and a bunch of post-its, make your own design decisions and put them in place. So we can keep things really simple. Other comments about posters?
I'm not as good as drawing it.
Don't use. We can tutorial. Get someone in your class to draw them for you.
A visual learning environment and create that visual to support your teaching material.
Yeah, great point. We all get together afterwards and make a whole pile all together. Mm-hmm. It's a group thing. Yep. You can keep the information up for the duration of the course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we're working as a group, we can then put it up on the wall and have those learnings there. Great.
Well, I was just going to say, you could use one poster to teach many different subjects if you can use it in the right way.
Yeah. I've seen it done actually. What is it?
I mean, this is obviously a small poster, but what's happening in this image, agriculture on one side, quite extractive, permaculture on the other, restorative. And I had a larger version of this at the last course. Ro taught for an hour about 10, 12 different topics using questions just on one image. And I drew the image and my mind was blown. So the things you can see in a simple image, in a picture from a magazine, making it size appropriate, of course.
Vision boards are good too.
Yeah.
Don't draw.
Yeah. One other way that I use posters, this is a design process poster that is being worked on now. A few people have seen this from dinner at Shani's house or from the last PDC. It's small because it's in progress. I'll print it larger when it's done. But here, we can't see the details, but we can see a few different rectangles. So each one of those rectangles is part of our site analysis process. One of them is slope and water. We've got soil. We've got vegetation. We've got buildings and access. each one of these little things corresponds to another poster where I've drawn an example of how to do a soil site analysis, and they're stuck on the wall. So as we're going through the design process, which is long and it involves different teachers and different parts of information, this is how we place everything we're learning about in a central location, and for learning that's really valuable.
Shall we give Brenna a round of applause?
Detention.
Do you mentally have a title for that sort of poster?
Infographic, I call it. And it doesn't have to be beautiful. You could have done this really easily with a couple of words and a few circles, and it would have the same learning outcomes. So anything we're always thinking, how can we enhance learning with our teaching tools? And this was one of the gaps that I saw when I taught on a PDC with design process and several teachers. Where's the continuity? Right, let's work towards continuity.
Questions, comments?
Just had a comment from a classroom setup. So I use visual boards quite a lot, but depending on where you go to teach your PDC, you might be able to stick things on the walls. So having some thick cardboard or timber or something so you can prop them on tables or against windows, so that way they're not impacting on accessibility and use of the room, but you're still creating that colourful, informative environment for you.
Because I was going to say string with pegs also works really well when you don't have walls or there's no wall space. Sorry.
How does it feel as a learner to have our learning taking form around us? We're slowly transforming the space.
What was that thing we did on that? Oh, that.
More real. Yes, that did happen. It can be revisited, it can be touched, it can be interacted with.
Revision.
For revision, yeah. When it's a PowerPoint that disappears, you know you made a few notes, how do you get back to that? Yeah.
And I think it's something we have learning spaces that don't have stuff all over the walls. So we've got the barn here and outside, which are places that are much more not as visually cluttered.
This is our memory palace.
For anyone that we invite to come along to the party tomorrow night will walk in and think, whoa, this is well and truly our learning environment for this week, and we've created this together. Could I please ask that we pop that poster away for now, and I will stick it up there that we can look at lunchtime. I would really value people's input into that poster, so take a photo, have a think about it.
And as a teaching moment, when you let tools out in a group, and they become a distraction straight away, particularly with kids, that you want to hold on to the tools really close. As soon as it's like sand bits or anything, or boards or anything, any people, kids and adults will immediately use it, which is great, but it's at the right time.
Finish your instruction first. Before we jump on, because you can see we're moving away from posters, I'm not a visual, I can't draw at all. Some of the co-teachers that I teach with can, which is awesome, but when you're not teaching with them, then you're kind of like, ugh. The person who has done all the illustration in Ro's new book, and all of her books roll, course up, you can buy his images, and they're done digitally, so you can print them. I printed them at A0 and at A1. They're all black and white, and they don't blur, is what I meant by the size, they're scalable. And I use those as a teaching tool, and I wanted to let everyone know that you can purchase them from him. And I'm sure, or I don't know, can people buy your posters as digital versions to use as their teaching?
I'm aiming towards that as Creative Commons. Yes, this one's $30. That's the only one we've had printed properly yet, and I'm really happy to share. And a lot of people use my Art as Activism Works, the things on Instagram and Facebook for their teaching, and I'm so happy when that happens. So that's all free. If you need high-res stuff for teaching, just email me and I'll send it through. Would love to make a, Creative Commons teaching pack with all the nerdy stuff in there one day.
Some Patreon thing that then you get high quality images or something like that?
Yes. You can support me. No.
I wanted to ask Greta the name of the artist
list again, just if anyone wants to look them up?
Rob Allsop, ALLSOP. You won't find really anything on the internet about him, but I'm happy to pass on his email.
His name's on Rose books.
Yeah, his name's on the book, but there's no like website or landing page or order place. He's not very good at accepting people's requests to buy his work. He would happily give it away, but actually he gives a lot away, and we're trying to help him obtain yield with his work.
That's a really good point. It is hard for some people to accept that other people value them.
Yeah.
It's really important to be able to help people to feel comfortable and aware of what they're doing.
Andrew Jeeves, who illustrated the designer's manual, fascinating guy. Actually had a chat with him, it was Charlie's idea, about what that was like. Really interesting. If you're interested, maybe I can share the link with this group. Also on my Patreon, but I don't want to promote that. But that's what triggered it. I need some content. What can we do?
She's got a Patreon, so you can support the Patreon.
What was that? Patreon?
All right. But like putting together the designer's manual, all those drawings, there's like 300 or something in there, super technical, without computers. And he was like cutting up words to do the typesetting himself and fundraising they didn't have any money, so to get the printing they had to do pre-sales, but they didn't have a name for themselves because the book hadn't been published, so how do you get pre-sales and knocking on people's doors?
Apparently builders had a big chest of cuttings and said, here, draw this.
Amazing. And Rob's similar experience working with Ro, but obviously, and he's still working with Ro. And then working with David on Retro Suburbia. Fun times. Fun times. No trauma there. No, I'm joking. So, talked about posters. Now we're talking about cards. So many ways we can use cards. In the middle here, we have our out of scale house. Let's use this one instead. Our house. All right, that's north. North. And around the house, there are some elements. I'd invite everyone to stand up, have a look at some elements. And we've been talking about zones this morning, oftenest, nearest. So pick an element that would go well near the house in zone 1. What do we want to access on a daily basis or several times a day? Pick it up and pop it down. What have you got, Seb?
Compost toilet.
Compost toilet, excellent. What have we got?
Salads and herbs.
Salads and herbs. We've got pizza oven. Jasper, what do you have?
Chickens.
Chickens. And why would we put chickens near the house?
You want to go with the eggs and check, fill up the water.
Yep. We check on them every day. We want to hear them.
I'm thinking lemon tree, quite close to.
Ooh, why are we thinking lemon tree?
Raised beds.
Way on it.
So lemons they're a fruit tree, but they're kind of like a herb, aren't they? We use them in cooking. Are we likely to go and pick our lemons if they're way down the back? Probably not as often. Okay, what are we thinking then? We'll skip forward. Now we're talking about zone 5. So these are the areas, instead for the purpose of this, let's go with zone 4. Zone 4. What did we learn about zone 4? What's happening in zone 4?
Woodlots.
Yeah.
Sheep, we need the alpaca.
We've got forests that we interact with. Okay, we've got some livestock there. Fodder trees. What's that one, Rachel? Firebreak. Is that appropriate for zone 4? Yeah, why?
Put some of that up here as well, though, where I live.
Oh, so now we're hearing an interesting point. Some things aren't just that easy to categorise. We might actually have some elements in more than one zone. Is there another example of that here?
Cow. Compost area. The bird bath. Goats. Yeah,
Bird bath, compost area, cow, bees. So bees, what zones could bees fit into?
Any zone as a pollinator.
Yep.
But in sort of 2, 3 as a source of honey.
Yeah, thanks,
for
Wayne.
easy access.
Spot on.
3, 4, 5, depending if you're going commercial.
Thanks, class. So we'll pause the exercise here. We can all hop back to our seats. Session. Not yet.
That's got to be the next pro do it publication.
This happened because I was panicking one night and had to teach zones of like the whole class instead of zones and sectors together, and wanted a visual thing, and I just like stole, these are all existing images that I made for somebody else, and it turns out I had enough for a whole game. I was like, whoa, my life is complete. So
If they're your images, you didn't steal them, did you? No, just for myself.
Use of cards, what are we noticing?
It's like versatile.
Versatile, involves lots of people, fast, and involve lots of people.
Good for anything, a list, elements, ethics, principles, techniques.
Yes.
Anything that can be arranged in space as well.
Yes. Spatial, listing and cards go together really well.
Easy to rearrange and then rearrange again.
The picture isn't always the story. People bring their own stories to the picture.
Yes.
So it depends on the question asked about the pictures.
You engage kinesthetic learners by getting them up. Tactile learners by you've got things to hold. Visual and audible when you call things out.
we had a sort of a richness of learning coming out here where people were saying, where does this one go? It could be in 2 zones. Oh, great. There's a line for discussion. So they create opportunities for learning.
So these cards have words and pictures on them. And some cards just have pictures, and some cards just have words. Seems like it would depend on your students' learning styles as to what might be more effective. Is there any sort of research as to any, having just a word on it? Is it going to fail as opposed to a card with a pretty picture?
How do we feel as learners when there's cards with just words?
Good parts of it.
Does it become a bit less inclusive for people who might have reading troubles?
It depends on the content a bit. The theory sometimes. Pictures are so exciting. Sometimes you have to know what the pictures are though.
Yeah, so the reason I bring it up is because I do use cards with just words on them, and I do say to people, if you're not a word person, just pass to the next person. But it does seem to still be fairly effective.
It's on the number of words for me, I think.
Yeah.
The pictures you can skim pretty quickly and get that first round of information that you can then filter if you want to, but words you have to stop and read each one before you have to do that process.
I'm the other way around. I find a word really concrete and quick to pick up, but sometimes it takes me a lot to work out what a picture is, if it's three-dimensional, singular, what the depth is, or
Yeah,
colours have been thrown in.
Yeah, I like both, but I like big words, small picture. There's big pictures, small words.
What Gemma's saying in making it a safe place to not be a words person, and the phrasing around that is really inclusive. It also depends on the activity. If it's a small group, a few words really effective, and if they're stuck on a page or in some way that we can reference later, possibly more effective than the images. If it was something like this, if all of these coloured bits were just words on white bits of paper, possibly overload. So just matching it to your learners and also to the method. Yeah. What we really want to avoid is having people who had a hard time in school or aren't strong readers feeling even more vulnerable in our classes. And it does happen in PDCs quite often. All right. So there's loads of different ways to use cards. The storeroom's full of other people's cards. I think Heather had about 85 different kinds of card games for the PDC she taught out, and they're all still in there, and they're fantastic. Again, like we were saying with posters, help trigger our memory as the teacher as well. Laminating things, it's plastic. I found this laminator and all of the sheets for $30 online, so I was feeling pretty chuffed about that. But obviously don't have to laminate if that's not something you're comfortable doing. They do last a lot longer though.
At our school we do things on card.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Because schools are notorious for laminating thing for 1 year. Whereas I imagine there's a bit used for maybe more than a year.
So that was a bit of chat about cards. Now we'll move on to handouts. So in this session of the PDC, we've just done our client interview and we went and met the clients. They were lovely, weren't they? And now we're thinking about their place on a base map. So remember we did base mapping yesterday? And base maps are to scale, and when we're thinking about our base map, this one's a 1 to 1,000 scale. We'll be talking about getting a base map down that's a bit more visual at a smaller scale, maybe 1 to 200. What are we noticing?
Listening and not listening. Very distracting.
You're running a dictatorship because you're actually saying one for you, one for you.
Yes. Do what I said?
How can I do it better?
I was confused. Maybe I missed it. Yeah, true. I was still looking at you as well. Yeah, that's true. I didn't completely disagree. Oh, I disagree.
I was just entirely focused on, ooh, what's she handing out?
Yeah, we're like it.
Yeah.
I was going to include it, so I got one. I was counting them in my head.
It's so familiar to me, that style of teaching. Is that like everyone's memory of school?
Yeah.
I would explain the task and hold up a poster and maybe run through the exercise, get some questions and then hand it out. But I don't know.
But that's, how would that way possibly be more effective?
They're prepared for what they're going to receive and have an idea of what it's about before they then have it in front of them and get lost in it. What next?
Puts it in context and lets them know what to anticipate.
You either have one for everyone or you've got people in groups. You don't exclude.
I like what Tamara said. It's kind of tell them what you're going to teach them, tell them what you should do. That's really very solid structure. Yeah. So having our handouts here, explain first, introduce the fact that we're going to have handouts in the near future. When distractions happen, what do we do as teachers?
Or call them out. Or give the student something to do while you sort out everything.
Yeah. We might give some, I'm not sure what this is, so we'll just not get distracted by it.
Why do we pause as teachers? Where did everybody's eyes go? So noise, movement, very distracting, and that's applicable to the handout thing too. Noise, movement. So we're going to have handouts in a second, or as well, we're going to break out into groups in a second. But first, here are the instructions. Then the handouts get passed around, not by the teacher. Also, instructions will be pair sharing. So with the person next to you, come up and grab a handout. Yeah.
You're going to be in groups. It's 3 of your choosing. Everyone's straight away.
Yeah.
I also, touching on what everyone said, if you explain something first and then hand it out, there are going to be a lot less questions than if you hand it out, try and explain, and then people who aren't listening then have to ask you all the questions that you just explained because they weren't listening.
So a great way to get around that, and we might cover it in groups tomorrow, but I'll say it now, is if we have more than one direction, this is applicable to handouts, applicable to some other circumstances too. People will remember the first and then say, wait, what did they say? So we're getting into groups in a second. Get into groups and you're going to talk about your first email address with your groups. Everyone can remember that. Get into groups, chatter. Once we've seen everyone's in groups, quiet, and then we'll give either the instructions verbally or ideally verbally and on a poster or the board, or on a piece of paper for the group to figure it out themselves.
That's a good question. When you've asked a question, it takes some people longer to think of answers than others. I get that you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, and if no one's looking pensive or has responded, then you would give a prompt. How long do you wait? I know that's a how long is a piece of string question, but could you talk to how you gauge that?
I can't pass that if you've asked me directly. I mean,
Sure you can. You can say, I'm going to think about that.
Shani, you're an experienced teacher. What do you think?
what Charlie was.
I'm just thinking about our workshop in Meeting now,
Yeah, go on.
where people came who weren't necessarily wanting to be engaged, and we waited an inordinate amount of time for some responses, and some came after 30 seconds or more, I think.
So that was an interesting example because we were in a different cultural setting, and so there were different rules, different social parameters around behaviour to settings that I was more familiar with. Also, when I went from teaching permaculture courses to facilitating in our community, again, different cultural setting, different parameters. So your mind, you're constantly adapting. Yes, it's how long is a piece of string because it's so context dependent. And in the intentional community setting, we knew we had a set time, we know why we're all there, everybody knows each other quite well, there's tensions around other things, so we could extend the waiting if we needed to. In a group setting on the first day, you're looking for safety, so not leaving too many silences that make people feel nervous. In the Mika Thara setting, in a remote community, where the objective was engagement, we thought, great, this is a strategy that's not working. How do we mix things up? Oh, people are reacting better when we chat one-on-one in an informal setting, kind of morning tea sort of setting. Let's move towards that instead. So really just checking in with yourself as a facilitator, what's happening here, noticing what's going on, and then giving yourself a second to think about something else to try. Thanks, Kath. What an important question, because it's kind of hard swimming in the water and you don't know where the sharks are and you don't know how deep it is and there's so many unknowns. But really pausing and checking in with yourself is one of those facilitator tricks.
Sorry, early on especially, just if it's not happening, just saying, I wonder if the person next to you can answer the question, just quickly, like not very long, and something happens to people's confidence because someone else has gone, oh, yeah, that's the answer, and then they feel more confident. And you have to do that less and less as you kind of go along.
And that's that classic teacher strategy of think, pair, share.
Think, pair, share.
Everybody have to think about it, share it with your partner, and then come back to the group.
I call it think, cheat, lie. Think, cheat, lie. So the teacher's asked you, find out the answer from the person next to you, cheat, and then when the teacher asks you, pretend it's your answer, lie.
I know people with just like learning difficulties that don't know how to lie, so that's a great way to teach them.
Brenna, when you're looking at the time, I'm also saying, hands up if you actually do like handouts. Do you do like getting them from a teacher? You know, so there is benefit of it, and as a teacher, you can often clarify your thinking in creating something what you're going to cover. It's kind of like the preparation that you do with the visual poster that other people do in handouts. At the same time, I did my first PTT with Rosemary, which was a PTT by handouts, and it's been great to have had other things. But I've got a great record where everything Ross thinks I should know about permaculture.
And sometimes I've seen Kat Lavers in her sessions on annual veggies, lots of information, lots of questions, everybody's fascinated. She would lead that in a really interactive style, catering to all the learning styles, and here's all that you need to know in the handout too. So people feeling safe, There's that safety net there.
I've actually individually given some people the handout. If they've identified that they need that, I've given it as I go so they can follow where it is that I'm actually going, but I would never give it to everyone.
It's a lot of printing. A lot of people would do that online. Yeah, so that's attention, you're weighing that up. Okay, we've got a little bit of time left. If you don't have anything else, you always have your learners. So learners can be a teaching tool as well. And the other night we saw Ro run briefly through a couple of examples. What were those two that she did here in the evening session? Water. Can some people be water, please? We're not doing that now. Can some people, you know, what are we learning about? Oh, okay, you're a check dam, you're a gabion wall. Someone says, what's a gabion wall? We have a chat about that. The learning's coming out. People are embodying a swale. Yeah, people are linking up to be a diversion drain. What's a diversion drain? We'll have a chat about that. Now let's see what happens when the water comes down and all these things are in place. Was it different from before when nothing was in place and the water was just running down the hill? What was the other one she did? Yeah, wind breaks. And you end up building it so that the wind, I've seen it done beautifully by Nick Towell in Tasmania. Stick, bit of fabric on the end, wind, 4 or 5 winds, coming up over the windbreak, eddying, down again. And teachers doing it with them so all the wind know what to do. And you know, when there's just 4 trees there, wind comes in through the middle. Really effective for learning and so simple. So we're going to practice one at the moment. I'd invite everybody to please stand up. You want to go outside or inside? It's our choice. Last thing. Outside? Okay, let's go outside. Quickly, no cups of tea, no toilet breaks, outside. In the centre here. Anywhere in the centre there. Who's feeling energetic today, like they'd enjoy a bit of a run?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
All right, Nick, you're up. So, Nick, this is your house. And I'm going to read a story, and you'll be acting it out. And we have some key players in the story, and the rest of us are just going to watch what happens. And there's one other role. Who's a good timekeeper?
Yep, not Nick.
Do that, Ollie? Ollie, if you could please keep time, put down, of Nick's morning routine.
Yeah.
And the challenge is to complete your morning routine as quickly as possible.
All right, good challenge.
This is in a session on zones. Nick the Permie wakes up every day keen to get into the garden. He walks outside to pick a lemon for his morning cup of tea. He then heads to the chook house to get some fresh eggs for breakfast. When he's there, he notices that the chooks are getting low on water, so he goes over to the water tank and fills up a bucket for the chooks. All the chooks start clucking and they look hungry. So Nick the Permie heads over to the veggie bed and grabs some weeds to feed the chooks. The seedlings in the hothouse need watering at this time of year. Hothouse, hothouse. So Nick the Permie fills up a watering can at the water tank and waters the hothouse. Then he waters the veggie bed, veggie bed, veggie bed. While he's there, he picks some salad for lunch and walks back to the house to make breakfast and have a cuppa. When he gets back to the kitchen, he remembers he needs more firewood. So he heads to the shed, to grab a wheelbarrow, and then to the woodshed, woodshed, to fill up with wood. Then he heads back to the house to get the fire going. A chicken breaks out of the chook pen and makes its way to the lettuces in the garden. Does Nick notice? Oops, it's time to visit the compost toilet. Better run, Nick, there's not much time. That was borrowed from Hannah Maloney, Good Life Permaculture. She may have borrowed it from someone else, maybe not. She's an excellent educator. What are we noticing about zones? What about our element placement?
All over the shop.
It's buggered. There's a lot of doubling up.
And as a group, the invitation would then be to rearrange this together. What were we on for time, Ollie?
1 minute and 26 seconds.
And we would try to beat that time the next time round. We're not going to do that in the interest of morning tea, but I am going to steal another couple minutes of our
Whole
time.
thing just
Thanks,
1 minute and
volunteers.
26
How do you
seconds.
feel?
Tiresome. Feels like my life actually over.
You did well.
I'm like terribly familiar with this feeling.
Nothing a bit of relative placement can't fix.
I'll speak to one more, and maybe we'll do a quick version of another one. These are the petals of the permaculture flower. Who's heard of the permaculture flower before? Yeah. So it's a useful symbol, thank you. A useful means of explaining permaculture in the first day. It can be used for an intro to permacultural sustainability as well. Wayne, I believe way back in the dark ages when we first met many million years ago on the advanced permaculture course, Dan Palmer used cards like this. Actually, I think he made me do it because he was disorganised. 7 petals in the flower, 7 cards, and the cards have stuff like land tenure, health and spiritual well-being, finances and economics. Place them on the ground, and the invitation is stand next to the petal that interests you. Land and nature stewardship, tools and technology, education and culture. And then inviting people to speak. Why did this interest you? What does this say about permaculture? Is it all about gardening? Creating that group safety, that people care on the first day. And also deepening understanding of permaculture. All right, one final one for working with people. Could you please hand these out randomly? Yep. People with a page, can you please stand up here? A couple people have seen this one before.
I don't want to pick people or feel like I'm missing someone, so. Sure.
And everybody else? Sitting over near Jasper and looking?
That was really funny, Pickles. So all I've made
Yeah. We're in design session. We're learning about design, different ways of designing. When we're trying to start a design, how do we know what to focus on first? This is a tool, Yeoman's scale of permanence. And so what it does is it moves from the most permanent down to the easiest to change, the least permanent. And as a class together, we're going to help these people arrange themselves from most to least. What is the most permanent thing here? What have you got?
crops. Climate.
Topography. I'm going to help so it's a bit speedier. Yep. What do you think? If your leads come on, start self-organising, we can help them out.
Walking's up this
I think
way.
road and access is a bit more changed.
No, I'm in soil. I reckon you're.
Yes, yes, yes.
Building. Buildings and roads and access after roads.
No, I reckon.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Record time. Just for the record, normally takes about 15 minutes.